下面我们进入本次论坛的第二场圆桌，主题是人工智能、生命科学筑牢创新的理论基石。请允许我介绍参加本场圆桌论坛的嘉宾。在我介绍到您的时候，请您移步上台。于学东，微生物学博士，现任广州实验室 ABSL3 实验室副主任，主要从事生物安全、新突发传染病防控技术和生物安全国际治理相关研究，兼任国家卫生健康委科技与生物安全标准专业委员会委员，中国合格评定国家认可委员会生物安全实验室认可评审组长。下一位 Dan Hendrycks， 人工智能安全中心主任， XAI 和 Scale AI 安全顾问，拥有加州大学伯克利分校人工智能博士学位。他在深度学习和 AI 安全领域都做出过突出贡献，并出版《人工智能安全伦理与社会导论》教科书。参加本场圆桌的另外2位嘉宾是张卫文老师和 Dr. Yassif。 Now, I will welcome everybody to step onto the stage。 同时也有请本场圆桌的主持人安远 AI CEO 谢敏熙。
Welcome everyone to the panel. The rapid advances of AI is ushering in an era of incredible opportunities for the life sciences, from accelerating drug discovery to improving diagnostics. As someone who has lost both my mother and brother to cancer early in my life, I deeply believe in the potential of AI to improve human health and solve diseases like cancer for good. However, this optimism is also tempered by a growing concern. For example, the ChatGPT agent released by OpenAI two weeks ago, it was classified as high risk according to its preparedness framework. This means that in theory, the agent system will be able to uplift novices in the creation of dangerous biological agents. And so this convergence of immense promise and also the growing risk is why we're here to talk about today. But let's first talk about the potential benefits. Where do you see some of the most transformative applications of AI in the life sciences emerging in the next few years? This could include, but not limit to, areas such as infectious disease prevention and monitoring. Perhaps we can start with you, Dr. Yu.
I think 我认为所有的这个可以预见的，在3到5年，就是尤其是在生物和医学领域，也就是说，在我们的生物影像以及病理诊断这块，已经不用质疑，它会很快的就会有一个突破，就是能够有自动化的诊断。另外一个像肿瘤这种提前的癌前的诊断，那么它因为它大数据训练以后，它可以不光是关注的你的肿瘤的这一部分，它还可以关注你周围结缔组织的变化，所以说它会有一个对我们的这个癌前诊断以及这个医学影像和这个病理学的诊断会有一个毫无疑问会有一个突破。另外一个，在应对我们的下一次大流行，或者是我们的疫苗和产品以及诊断方法方面，全球尤其 WHO 非常关注啊，它可能也是有一个突破。另外，在临床领域，那么它的应用是非常广泛的，所以说它可能在很多的这个治疗的领域，甚至是这个罕见病的领域，这个管道都可以有可能有一些突破。
感谢。Several of you also signed the Global AI Biological Risk Statement recently. I believe Professor Zhang Weiwen, Dr. Jaime Yassif, and Dr. Dan Hendrycks, all of you have signed the statement alongside other thought leaders in the field. What specific threat model for the convergence of the AI and the life sciences do you find most concerning or urgent? Perhaps we can start with you, Jaime.
Thank you. So as I noted in my talk, there are basically 3 categories of risk that are highlighted in the statement. One of them is about lowering barriers to access, so making tacit knowledge about the life sciences and how to conduct research more accessible to much larger groups of people. Examples of this are basically scanning the literature and helping novices understand biology without training, perhaps helping them troubleshoot biological experiments. And there have been a number of uplift studies that have been published recently by various security think tanks that have basically made the case that this is already starting to happen, specifically in the domain of large language models. The second category is raising the ceiling on potential harm, and this is an area that I am probably most concerned about. It's going to happen in an uncertain timeline, but I do think it is likely to happen. And basically, this is more an issue associated with biological AI tools. And these are specific tools that are meant to design biological systems for beneficial applications for life science research, for example, developing novel vaccines. There's a lot of benefit there. But these same capabilities, if you can engineer a living system to have different properties than it does naturally, they can also be exploited to cause harm. And I would say one of my main concerns is that in the next 2 to 5 years, will these tools have capabilities to more dramatically engineer living systems beyond what is possible now? Right now, you have tools that can design individual proteins, and that's pretty robustly good. But what could change in the future is the ability to design a whole signaling cascades and design entire new features or pathogenic features and design pathogens that are more transmissible, more virulent, and deadly, and maybe more resistant to medical countermeasures, and that perhaps AI could help transcend what humans can come up with our human existing knowledge. I think looking to the horizon further, and this is more uncertain, there's a huge, I think, commercial drive to automate the life sciences. This is happening across industry, again, for beneficial applications. Basically, there's this whole life cycle of bioscience research and development, from reading the literature, hypothesis generation, designing experiments, conducting them, and analyzing the data, et cetera. This is increasingly going to be automated. We don't know yet what the risks look like there, but it could end up lowering the barriers to entry in terms of skills for engineering living systems, and we should be watching as these capabilities develop and build in biosecurity by design from the ground up as those systems are being developed.
Thank you, Jamie. What about you, Dan or Professor Zhang?
Sure. So I think there's substantial risk of the large language models being used by malicious actors for helping them develop a bioweapon, and as a consequence, we need to be adding safeguards for this. So at XAI, for instance, how are we managing these potential benefits while mitigating these risks? The answer is fairly simple. All you do is you refuse various bioweapon-related requests, and for other types of requests, you let those through. You can, now, what's the definition of bioweapon-related requests? What we have is if the request is pertaining to expert-level information about or detailed procedural advice, for instance, for U.S. select agents, biological agents on the Australia group list, things of that sort, then it will be refused. Now, if people are doing beneficial applications of those, they can give us their email and we can remove that input and output filter for the model. So in this way, we are by default refusing expert-level virology advice to users unless we know who they are, and if they're, say, a researcher at Genentech or a PhD student at MIT or what have you, then the filter can go off. So this is an easy way of capturing these benefits and minimizing these risks of people just telling us who they are. If they made an account a second ago, they don't get expert-level virology advice. Sorry, but I don't think that's too much of a trade-off. And if they're a legitimate person, they can give us their email. So I think people claiming, or if people are saying, oh, well, we're going to have to release the whole model, and we're going to there'll be too steep of a trade-off, so let's just not have any safeguards for it. That doesn't seem so. We can add very good safeguards, provided that they are behind or that they are closed weight. If they're open weight, you can very easily take off those safeguards. You can very easily remove any input or output filter. So an implication is that if models have these highly dual use capabilities, say expert level virology capabilities, there are ways of making them safe and capturing the benefits and minimizing the risks, provided if they are closed source. If they're open source, though, the safeguards can be taken off. I've done research to try to make it so that the safeguards for open weight models are harder to take off. However, that probably will require still many more years. So progress has been made, but it's not there. So maybe in the future, we would be able to release open weight models that have what would be high CBRN capabilities, as OpenAI's determination is that they're high bio capabilities. But in the meantime, I think that this basically has to stop, and this is one reason why XAI, despite Elon earlier, saying things like, "Oh, we're going to release the weights after every release" and things like that, we're not doing that anymore because the bio risks are simply too high. The OpenAI open weight model, for instance, will be a mini model which will not have those extreme biological capabilities. I'm very good friends with Alex at Meta, I suppose I can just say it's been reported that they're not doing open weight stuff anymore for Frontier because of these Frontier safety risks. At least some of the main open sourcing AI developers on the U.S. side are fortunately releasing models that don't have these sorts of capabilities and are not releasing the weights of ones that do. So I think everybody needs to be assessing the models for the capabilities that they have, and if the risks are too high, or if the capability levels are too high, not releasing those weights.
Thank you, Zhang. We'll get to the solutions in a bit. I don't know whether Professor Zhang has anything to add regarding the threat models.
Okay, I may just add 2 comments. I totally agree. I think there are 2 things most, especially after the day and yesterday. Especially after the meeting today and yesterday, I realized that 2 issues probably even bigger than we initially thought. One is the sort of novel biological knowledge out of the AI study. That sounds impossible 1 year ago, even 2 years ago, but recent studies showed that, the novel protein synthesis by the CR2 group already showed that they are not chiefly similar protein function, doesn't need the sort of similar DNA sequence, which we use very often. DNA sequence as one of the key principles we use for detection and also for defense. So those kind of novel knowledge which were becoming, the XAI was released a couple of weeks ago, and I recall that Elon Musk gave an interview and said in this year, maybe latest next year, we'll have some new knowledge came out through the section between the multiple science together. So you can imagine that will be happening, and we are not ready yet. I think that's the first one. The second one is sort of the unintentional harm caused by AI itself. AI sounds like it is possible that AI even can develop its own intention doing something bad, which are not really in our consideration before. I think, for biology area, we know that there are so many ways you can cause harm, and if the AI really achieve that kind of a capability, that would be scary. I think, we really need to think about at the higher level how to achieve those kind of safeguard over there. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Zhang. And so now let's talk about the solutions. Dr. Yu, you have deep expertise in laboratory biosafety and also biosecurity governance in general. How should we be strengthening the biosafety and biosecurity measures in the context of AI? How do you think about addressing the dual-use risk in particular?
For the biosafety and biosecurity, I think is now internationally, just like Jaime and the NTI and international organizations do the work, awareness of the biosafety and the biosecurity risk. It's very good, but in the area of the AI, it's totally different because the risk is huge. It's not just like we have a pathogens list. for example, for the Federal Safety Agency program, and there are 8 pathogens, but now it's different because all the risk group 3 and the risk group 4, and plus maybe 7 or 9 kind of activities should pay more attention to, concern about those kind of activities. So it's totally different. So what that means is the AI alignment is a big problem because maybe the big factory we have the red teaming, we have the red teaming something check surveilling the safety. But now the big company we can include enroll the biosafety professionals. But for the policymaker, governors, something, we need a lot of this professional, biosafety professional in this field. So I think internationally, cooperation, we should have a framework, just like I mentioned today, enhance the international cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you for noting the importance of risk management framework and international collaboration. So Dan earlier was focusing on language-based foundation model, but there is also another class of AI systems that are relevant for the life sciences and biosecurity. I want to turn to Jaime. What are some of the technical safeguards that are being developed and implemented for biological design tool?
Sure, thank you for the question. So I think one thing I want to reiterate that's important to remember is, again, the state of play of developing technical guardrails for biological design tools, which are now being called biological AI models as the field continues to evolve. It's in its infancy. So we are very early days. It's going to require a lot more research to find which solutions work and which don't, which is why we've developed this research agenda, and we really would love to see a sort of biosecurity by design innovation ecosystem working together to develop and test these tools, figure out what works and what doesn't. We published a report in 2024 about guardrails for biological design tools. It's on our site if you're interested. Happy to share information about how to find it. But basically, we talk about 2 categories of interventions. One is to address this point about how you need to basically have managed access to tools in order to prevent safeguards from being stripped out. I think that's a really important piece. And the other piece is the guardrails themselves. There is a lot of active conversation in the community about what are the trade-offs between open source models versus not. And I think if we can figure out a tiered access system where the most powerful models that have the most incredible uplift capabilities and the ability to generate novel knowledge that could be dangerous if exploited for harm, I would argue we have to protect those tools. I think similar arguments from my colleagues on the panel, I wholeheartedly agree. I do think it's feasible to do it, and I think we must build that system. The other piece is the guardrails themselves. So there's, for example, there's this idea of screening and refusals. We can take an approach to AI biomodels that's analogous to DNA synthesis screening. If you detect some sort of incoming request that is potentially dangerous, the model has an opportunity to pause or hold it and for further review before providing an answer. There's also other people have worked on curating training data so that you only train the model on certain kinds of data. I think there's an open question about whether that's going to work well in practice. And then I think just managed access to the data, training data themselves is something to bear in mind, not just the models, because in fact, most of the data that are going to be used to train powerful AI biomodels of the future have yet to be created. So we should have a thoughtful approach in advance about how we're going to govern those data. So those are some examples of the kinds of things we're thinking about.
Thank you. So far, we have been talking about the earlier stages of risk management, including data before development, red teaming, before deployment. We've also talked about tier access or the debate around open source. I want to turn to you, Professor Zhang, about a downstream intervention around DNA synthesis screening. What is that intervention, and how is that process evolving in light of the advances of AI, in particular the potential for AI to design novel sequences and potentially evade some of the current screening mechanisms?
I mean, if you look at the typical research cycle of synthetic biology or similar rational design by technology, you can pretty much divide it into 4 stages called DBTI cycle. The first one is design, and the second one is build. You build a cell, build a DNA. Third one is testing. Of course, you have theory, you test. The last one is learning. And all this first step and what you learn, so circle will go along and along. So you can imagine that, especially at the early stage, the design stage and also the building stage, I think it will be very important. Obviously, if you can implement the technical or policy regulation or solution along the whole cycle, that would be the best. That's actually we are advocating to doing that. But minimally, I think people should start at the beginning. For example, design. I think Jaime just talked about biological design too. That's actually touched briefly on the design part. The building part, one of the key technologies is DNA synthesis. So you are doing something new, and whether it's a new cell or new function, you need the new protein and the new DNA. So after many years, actually, discussion that people try to find what's the best way to put a checkpoint over there. And I think most of us will agree that although it's not perfect, but the DNA synthesis screening, so we screen all the DNA coming for synthesis to see what's the purpose, whether that involves functioning DNA or some drug synthesis. That would be sounds like a practical way to deal with that. So in the last couple of years globally, I think, especially in the US and also in China, a lot of discussion that how to implement this system, and a couple leading organizations, including NTI and ABS in Geneva and several other organizations, are really push a global process to screen all the DNA come into for synthesis. That would be a very good way to, at least for now, to deal with some of the issue. Of course, I already mentioned that there's some other way you can cheat through the system, like if it's designed based on the new biological knowledge, there will be some issue over there. But I think eventually, I mean, after all the learning, we can keep updating I think that will be work. Hopefully that will be that will be, I think will be the first one first step towards the final sort of package to deal with the issue. I answer.
Thank you. So in the audience and on the panel, we have an incredible diversity of backgrounds and disciplines, from frontier AI developments to policy to biosecurity and life sciences developments. What is one area of debate that you would like to see more discussion and potentially more consensus across different disciplines? Let's just say in the next 6 to 12 months. This is open to any one of you.
Happy to jump in.
Sure, Jaime.
So I think there's already a very lively debate about this open source versus managed access paradigm, and there's for AI biological models, and whether or not we should just accept the fact that most of the models are going to be deployed in an open source basis, and we should just plan for that future and accept those risks and stop trying to do managed access or guardrails, and that it's futile, and that even if the leading AI labs are responsible, there'll be some person who recodes up a model outside of it and makes it open source and distributes it, and it's basically security theater. And so I think there's a huge debate about whether this is even feasible. And I think, but I also see that there's the winds are shifting towards a recognition that we need managed access to the most powerful models. And I guess my view is that we should see the future as something that we have the agency to shape. If the stakes are as high as we think they are, and if we could see a pandemic come up in the next 2 to 5 years that's caused by an AI that creates a novel pathogen that's more dangerous than what we've seen, and we could see a future where we're seeing pandemics that are worse than COVID, and the tools could cause that. That's a huge risk that we have a shared global interest in mitigating. And if part of that is putting access controls in place on some of the most powerful tools, we should think really seriously about mustering the international wherewithal to build that future. I think it's possible, and we should seize the moment while we still have it to sort of shape the future and have a responsible deployment of these models.
Let's see, am I audible? Okay. I agree. I think we need to create norms on the open source thing ASAP. Basically, it's not a technological inevitability that these things be open sourced. Again, as I mentioned in the US, you have Meta and XAI and some of the others selectively choosing models or releasing models that are below that sort of capability threshold. So companies could just choose not to release those. And you could increase incentives so that they do not release those. One place to start with that would be liability clarification. So I think that is increasingly a deterrent in the United States, and I don't know how law in other sort of countries are, but I think it is a violation of reasonable care to willfully and wantonly be releasing AI models that have expert level virology capabilities without any safeguards. I think that's basically tearing up the Biological Weapons Convention. And unfortunately, the AI scientists don't even know what the Biological Weapons Convention is. So they're releasing these things, and oh yeah, I guess they're good at bio stuff. What do you know? It's very unfortunate, and we need to, I would say, probably by the end of the year, need a strong international norm on this. It's not just bio as well. Later on, they're also starting to have these sort of zero-day vulnerability things. I'm not particularly concerned about the cyber capabilities of these right now, but there are many concerning signs. When they have more agential capabilities, when they can operate over longer time horizons, then you have risks of attacks on critical infrastructure. The incentives for the Biological Weapons Convention, the Chemical Weapons Convention, and I think for agreements on cyber capabilities are because it is not in the interest of superpowers to be mass proliferating ways of creating a poor man's atom bomb. This is why we collaborated on the former two in part in the past. And I think there will be similar reasons to be collaborating on bio in the future between the different states, as well as collaborating on cyber capabilities, in particular those that can be used to attack critical infrastructure. By critical infrastructure, in power grids, banking systems, et cetera. So if we're mass releasing those, we're, I think, unfortunately, a bit defenseless. If we're saying that it's inevitable that they're being released, well, I think then you're just going to be living in a world where your banking systems and your power plants are being brought down, where you're getting very stealthy, extremely potent pandemic spreading throughout the population, and then suddenly everybody, oh, whoops, there's a pandemic, and it's got this fatality rate. The longer-term solution to some of these, or at least in terms of mitigation, would be as if AI is providing explosive economic growth, then you can pay for extremely expensive biosecurity infrastructure across the world and upgrade all of your critical infrastructure. But that's much farther out in the future. So in the next years, I think for those two threat models, you're needing to create some norms for that. And I think bio is one of the earlier test cases. So I would urge people here to make these AI scientists at these companies that have a habit of doing this open weight stuff to be aware that they are basically tearing up the Biological Weapons Convention. Fortunately, some actors in the U.S. are backing down, but this still is not a very strong norm, and I think it's urgent, needs to be taken care of by end of this year.
Very strong comments there, Professor Zhang.
Well, totally agree. I think this is a very important issue. I also very much like to see something happen at the international level, whether it's a norm or some kind of consensus at the UN or in between country level. I think that will be very important. Because, I mean, if you look back to the history, I think biology are pretty much open, sort of operate in open form. I think whether we are doing for agriculture or medical research, they are pretty much for everyone. I think the science is pretty open, not much compared to other disciplines, and not much in the preparatory area. So, but recently with the rapid progress of AI, we already found out that actually a lot of tools, I mean, are not as accessed by scientists that much. For example, large language models are not accessed to the community. We can actually do more together to help, human can, but because of the close motion and not able to do that, which, in my opinion, is not good for the whole world in the future. That needs some kind of consensus and agreement, hopefully. are concerned with biosecurity, and something can be done, right? I guess, I mean, you can do that within the sort of trust community, and have access to those kind of community or scientists. Those can be the things we can do together. But I really like to see it's a revolution technology, and I think it can be done a lot of good things. And of course, we also talk about some of the potential risk, but at the same time, I think we want to collect as much as benefit at the same time, which because at the same time, because all the politics and also some of the business consideration, that I feel that large language model are not accessed that much by the biological field. I think that would be.
Thank you. Dr. Yu?
I think we should, for the Duke, and also for the CBRN, something like that. And I think we should, the Institutional Biosafety Committee and or the institutional review entity will play a very possible role in identifying all the project, because the project is funding, their funding agency. He will do those kind of things. For the institutional level, academic level, or the national level, we should have this. Just like Professor Zhang mentioned, we should do something that's responsible for the life science safety. I think the AI alignment is not perfect now. So for the institutional level, and we should play IBC and our IRE should play a very positive role to guarantee the AI and life safety.
So now every one of you would have one final minute just to make another call of action for the next 12 months. You know, when we are back at World AI Conference in 2026, what would you like to see happen or encourage the audience to consider?
So I would say a disturbing trend I've observed is because of this growing competition we see internationally in this AI race, that there is a danger of a race to the bottom on safety. There's such strong incentives to race ahead and accelerate development for economic reasons, for competitiveness reasons, that safety has been put down the agenda in various AI conversations internationally. And I would just say we can't afford to allow that continue. We have a shared interest globally in guarding against misuse, because we're all going to lose if we don't protect against it. One of the things that we're trying to do at NTI to have an international conversation where we can move forward together to build norms is our AI Bio Global Forum. It's meant to bring together experts from China, from the US, from Europe, and from other countries and regions, both policymakers from AI safety institutes and technical experts, to develop a common view about what the norms and best practices should be and to drive adoption. And so I think it's really important to strengthen that forum. And let's not race to the bottom on safety. It's in our shared interest to keep safety at the top of the agenda.
That's a good message. And Professor Zhang?
I would just have add a quick comment that I think take into the consideration the fast progress AI. You are talking about next year. I can imagine next year will be a lot of progress in the AI area. So I just want to stress the urgency. I mean, how to do all the things we talk about today. I think it's really need some action together, whether it's international collaboration or DNA synthesis screening. I just want to add that urgency into all these tasks. We should really start doing something.
I think it would be very useful. I mean, the U.S. and China, the U.S. and the Soviet Union, for instance, collaborated on nuclear, on bio, on chemical, even though they're in competition with each other. So it's possible to have these types of agreements. However, before any type of agreement, since we're operating under shorter timelines, since I think the open weight stuff should have stopped yesterday, we're basically having a continuous risk amplification. It just keeps getting worse and worse, but it's already at a level of providing uplift. Given that, the immediate priority is creating stronger norms against this open weight stuff and speaking to people from these companies or creating pressure in each of our societies, in the US and in China, against the release of these sorts of open weights. That can be by speaking to those labs, that can be by making them aware of this sort of stuff, aware that other companies are decreasing the amount that they are doing the open weight, being more mindful of these capability thresholds. That's so creating a norm first. Then after that, maybe there could be a treaty or formal type of agreement through some track one type of thing. But at least on the US side, there is somewhat more self-regulation by decreasing the amount of weights being released. So I think that's the immediate priority. I was saying for the next 6 months, I think probably the next 3 months. Immediately, basically. If anybody here has the ability to influence those norms, creating norms is the first step, and then hopefully this can be around malicious use is the first place where the US and China can be recognizing their shared interests in AI, and that can be getting the ball rolling for international coordination on bio issues, and then later on cyber issues. And then later, and on loss of control issues.
Thank you. And final words from you, Dr. Yu?
我用英文讲，这中文讲一下可能更清楚一点。就是安全治理的底层逻辑一直没有变，也就是说，我们要把这个风险识别，然后风险管控，把它的所有的风险点的控制到一个可接受范围。那么这个可接受的风险，那就需要我们的评估要细致。那目前的矛盾点在于我们原来的线性思维。 以及我们产生的风险的量，与我们现在的 AI 和生物这个融合以后的指数级别的这个风险，它的量的增加，就导致我们在这个大模型对齐以及我们这个风险识别方面出现了这个一些这个困难。那么，所以这块我希望在未来的1年，我们能够看到一个明显的路径，也就是我们有一个明显的路径，把我们的对我们的这个大模型对齐，尤其是我们各个专业领域人员。 在我们的红队就是 red teaming 这个过程中，加入到我们的这个风险识别，以及提出这个有效的风险管控措施中，那么真正的把我们 AI 相关的风险，在各个领域的细分的领域的风险识别并有效管控，治理到一个可接受的风险这个 level。好，谢谢。
Thank you, everyone. I think the panel has acknowledged the exponential progress of AI and what that means for the potential opportunities for the life sciences and human health, while noting that the escalating risk for biosecurity. Let's have a big round of applause to this excellent panel. Thank you, everyone.
感谢各位嘉宾的真知灼见，谢谢。